Hey everybody out there, it's me, back at you. Today I decided to do something a little different, switch it up a little bit, kind of look like somebody. Um, yeah, so I guess like a whole lot has occurred in the past few days and probably um, not much of anything, you know? Um, for me, um, as I kind of explained to you before, sorry, fixing the eyebrows. Yeah, being half Asian, you don't really get eyebrows as such, so gotta kind of supplement what nature gave you. Um, yeah, but as I told you guys before, I've been on this journey, kind of, of self actualization, I guess you'd call it. And also, the biggest thing for me is I hope to have a child at some point. And in having a child, sorry, I feel like my eyes always go down here, which is looking at myself on the screen, but I should be up there looking at you guys. Um, so the journey has been, sorry, I'm not rolling my eyes, just kind of thinking about it. The journey has been interesting, and I guess one of the catalysts for this whole thing is for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a parent. I mean, back in kindergarten, I always wanted to be the mom in school. I know it's a little silly. Um, I always wanted to be the mom in school, or when we would play house, I always wanted to be the mom, and I wanted to drive a minivan, and I wanted to pile my kids in and take them to and from soccer practice. And, I think people frequently say, or it's known, and a lot of schools have thought that when children display that sort of thing, typically it's because um, it's like a behavior that they might be missing, and so they're overcompensating it in their play. And for me, I came from a home where I had two working parents, um, and then I was an only child. So a lot of spending time alone and by myself. I mean, I got to give it to my parents. They were out and working hard. My mother and father were never married. So I spent, the majority of my time with my mother and then some time with my father. Um, and so, I was essentially what some might call a lock and key kid. I only hung out with adults. I had a couple of friends in the neighborhood, but I'm not so sure my parents always approved of the kids that I hung out with. Not necessarily because of um, who they were as people, but just because the family seemed a little suspicious, which is fine. I think that as a parent, you always want to ensure that your child is doing the things that they should do and they're in the best scenario, or around the best people as possible, because you don't want to worry about them. You want to make sure that they're safe. And I think if you've read up on anything else about, kind of the situations that kids end up in, a lot of these situations occur because they're around people that they probably should not be around. Or even sometimes when they're in their own home, they're around people that you think are safe, and unfortunately they're not. But in saying all that, I think that they wanted to kind of stack the deck, or stack the gods in their favor or whatever. So they chose to, kind of dissuade me from hanging out with some people. Um, so yeah, um, it was essentially kind of just me. It was either me and adults the majority of the time. Um, and so, you know, as I kind of went through my childhood into my middle school and teen years, and now even, 20s and 30s, 35, where I am now, I've always said to myself that I wanted to have a family. And to be honest with you, I guess through the course of life or having experiences, I realized that um, I don't have a lot of friends. And the friendships that I have or close relationships are all like very strained. And I could kind of identify within myself. Sorry, I'm like raising my shoulders. I actually try and do a good job of like, um, I took a, uh, so A, I had anxiety issues, which I think I've told you guys before, and B, I took I know, and I get sidetracked a lot, so you guys just bear with me. B, I took a class in college where they talked about like the psychology of human effectiveness and things that you can do to be successful in life. And one of the things that they talked about is like when people get uncomfortable, they keep their shoulders up here. And so I try to do a good job. You'll see me very frequently try to like pull my shoulders down. So it's A, you know, to like engage the audience and make you guys not feel like I'm all locked up. And B, um, as far as my anxiety, typically like when you keep your shoulders up like this, it causes you to feel more tense and more anxious. So to you guys out there that are suffering from anxiety, those are one of those things that helped me to get through my anxiety. It was like just realizing how my body reacted in those situations that I deemed as negative that weren't essentially negative, but one of the things that would help me is just doing something like that, just dropping your shoulders. So if you can, if you're out there and you're watching and you're listening, if you feel like your shoulders are tensing up, just go ahead and drop them shoulders. And you feel better. You can feel like your head feels looser, you know, and you don't feel as tense. It actually also kind of helps you with your awareness of just your body and how you feel. But anyway, so I got sidetracked, as I said, I tend to do. Yeah, so I've always wanted to have kids, and I knew, you know, because of these strange relationships, etc., that there had to be something that was underlying, you know? And I think a lot of people go through life and they have all these strained relationships and they don't know why they have these strained relationships. And I did not want to have those strained relationships. I think in kind of like looking over what it would mean for me to have a family and also thinking about how my future children would perceive me, I wanted to ensure that I was the best version of myself. Because when I have kids, I want them to look at me and think, wow, like my dad is a respected person in the community. He has all these great relationships. These are ways that I should carry myself. However he's carrying himself is how I should carry myself, you know? So I wanted to be like a great role model. And one of those things was figuring out why my relationships were so strained. I've also had like a lot of friendships that my really successful ones were with people that were just a little bit I don't know what word to use. Like I don't want to use a harsh word, but I would say that there were people that had a lot of the challenges that I had, you know? And I could look at them and I could see the areas in which they were very successful, you know? And I could also see their downsides. But the funny thing about like their downside or, you know, those parts of their personality that they felt that they could improve, you know, or somebody on the outside could look at them and say, wow, they should really improve that, is that they didn't always see those things. And so it became very apparent to me that I might have something like that. You know, there could be something within me that is holding me back. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I had no idea what it was. And I knew like I had the propensity to be kind of like my dad. And my dad is a really aggressive person. He's very confrontational in a lot of ways. He does things that make people uncomfortable, you know? And I knew that I was probably doing those types of things. And I know that because I would have conversations with my friends, and in the end of these conversations, they would look shell-shocked, like, holy shit, what did this guy just tell me? This is the craziest shit ever, you know? Or something would happen and I wouldn't be able to let it go, and I'd literally, like, have to, like, just get out the anger however I could. And it made me realize that's the way that I was like my dad. And, I mean, I remember in my childhood, he used to do that. Like, he would kind of keep all his anger pent up, and then the littlest thing would just be like the tiny pin that popped the whole big ass balloon, you know? And it would be like, I never forget, like, it really reared its head when we were in the grocery store. Um, and we had like a hometown grocery store. There are a couple of them down here in Florida. Um, and one in particular, not the most famous one, but another one that's kind of all over the United States. They have low prices. That's their quality and that's their way. Um, you know, we would go into it, and I remember like we would do our shopping, which was never like, oh, Nicholas, grab what you want or what have you, which I mean, I hadn't really thought of it until right now, and now that I think about it, I probably resented him for that because I knew that he always had more money than my mom, but he couldn't like, allow me to have what I want. Anyway, off topic, Nicholas, and I promise it's one of the things that I'm working on. I will no longer be so off topic as I go off topic to tell you that I'm going off topic. But so anyway, so we were in the supermarket, and we'd go through, and I always dreaded him checking out. And I always dreaded him checking out of the grocery store because I knew that there would be a confrontation. It typically looked like either the cashier, which there were always like young kids, like 15, 16, just getting jobs. But they would be scanning his coupons and they wouldn't scan it right, and he would just pop off and tell them, what the F are you doing? You're such a piece of ass. You're so dumb, you're stupid, you don't know what you're doing. And it used to like traumatize me. And I remember like as he finished one part, so he'd finished checking out, I would be behind him and then I would lock eyes with a person and I would say, I'm so sorry, or like, I'm so, so sorry, just because I felt like I had to apologize. I didn't want these people to feel as if, wow, sorry, I just hit, ooh, that almost made me teary-eyed. Sorry. So anyway, I didn't want these people to feel less than. And the reason that I almost started crying is because in therapy, I believe I told you guys that I'm in therapy now. One of the things that I frequently, or that I've been getting recently, is that I've been the protector of other people, but not the protector of myself. And it's something that I'm working on. And whenever I see instances like that where I'm protecting people, I think like, it's so funny because there I was in the grocery store protecting these people, and then I would get home with him when he was like super angry and I couldn't protect myself from him. It was just me taking the brunt of his anger and him screaming at me and punching me and doing all this crazy stuff. So anyway, I digress, and I'm sorry, I'll work on that. But I like to give like all these different perspectives and backstory just so that you get who I am. And maybe it's wrong. Maybe it makes the story too long. But anyway, because like now I'm completely off topic. Anyway, so we would go to the cashier. He would kind of berate them. I would walk up and say, oh, I'm sorry. Next, he would go to the bagger, and he would really let the bagger have it. Like, he would say derogatory words for mentally handicapped people. He would call them that. He would use F-bomb, B-word, this S here, blah, blah, blah. He would just berate them, And I remember on multiple occasions, these kids would literally be reduced to tears. And I remember, like, only once was this girl bawling, and as my dad wheeled the cart away, I put my hand on her shoulder, kind of like, I'm so sorry. And he turned around and he saw me and he just laid into me, And that shit was traumatizing. To be honest with you, it was just straight traumatizing. But anyway, I say all this to say, that was one of the things that I felt I was starting to do. I wouldn't lay into people in that degree, but I know for sure that I was being nasty to people, and I wanted to change it. And I wanted to change it because of moments like that. And so moving forward, I thought, well, shit, I need to see somebody, I need to talk to somebody, and I need to get this out. And so I went on a website that's connected to um, a psychological kind of type of magazine. It kind of goes hand in hand, the website and the magazine, and they had like professionals in your area, and you could like choose like um, what their profession was, you know, or not what their profession was, but yeah, what their profession was, because you have like people that are just therapists, you have people that are psychologists, and people that are psychiatrists, and people that are just life coaches. And it's important to know that life coaches can get just like kind of a degree, not really a degree, but kind of like a certification. So they haven't had, you know, the amount of psychological training as a trained psychologist or psychiatrist, right? A psychiatrist can write prescriptions for drugs. Psychologists cannot. They are more focused on your mental well-being. Um, so it was good to see all the different aspects of that and what they encompass. And it helped me to narrow down who I wanted to talk to. I knew that I didn't want to go the medication route. Um, tip for me, what I've seen historically when I look at my friends that have done medicine, um, is that they seem like a glazed over version of themselves, you know, and it never helps them to deal with the core issue, you know. It's they just continue to get medicated and medicated, and the medication makes them feel some type of happy, but not actually happy, you know. They still have like I they still have like all this unhappiness. I described it to one of my friends that was on a couple of different like mood enhancers, as you know, she was like, what do I seem like when I'm on these? And I was like, you know, to be honest with you, I think that the issues are like a turd, and when you do the drugs, it's like you put a whole bunch of like frosting on the turd, like enough to make it look like a big pretty cake, and you're like, ooh, yay, this is so exciting, like I look great and I think I'm great, but in the core, you know that there's a turd in there. You know what I mean? So I didn't want that. I wanted to go to somebody and really talk through my issues and feel like there was no turd inside, you know? And so that's what I did. I started to see somebody in Miami Beach. I am in Miami, Florida. And that person has been helping me through the process, you know, and it's really helped me to uncover a lot of things. I've been, you know, trying to find, like I said, the crux of the issue, and trying to figure out like why it is that I have all these friendships that are strained, and these relationships that are probably not where I want them to be. And I think that going through this process with the doctor that I'm seeing has helped me to move better along that path, you know? For me, the funny thing is, and one of the reasons that I decided to do this blog, is that if I dig deep enough within myself, I can find answers, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's true for everybody. I just know for me, like, you know, especially like coming to the conclusion, I actually, and I'll talk to you about it in a different video, I came to the conclusion as to why I have all these types of anger issues. And what I learned in this process is that, you know, like I'd be talking to my therapist, we would do something like this. And when I mean something like this, I mean we would talk via the phone, because he lives a little bit in an area that's a little challenging for me to get to, just because if any of you have ever been to South Beach, it is like ram-packed 90% of the time. And parking is terrible. But we would have sessions like this where I'd sit and talk to him, and I would start to think about something like the issues that I have with people. And I would say to myself, well, why do I have these issues? And I'd say, well, I have these issues because, you know what, like, now that I think about it, people have complained that I'm cold and aloof sometimes, and that then on the other hand, when I see them, I'm like super involved in their lives and I want to like figure out what's wrong with them and help them in whatever areas that they're probably, failing in their life. And then I get a little too aggressive with telling them what they should do, and it's probably not a good thing. And so then I would go and think, well, like, what makes me feel that way? And I'd say, oh, well, I feel that way because probably I don't know how to cure my own shit. Well, what is my shit? Oh, I don't know. My shit is that sometimes I feel like my friends roll over me. And what makes me feel like they roll over me? Like, okay, let's think of an instance, Nicholas. And this could be really boring to you guys, but I think this could be helpful, like, in figuring out how to trace things back. But I would say to myself, well, what makes you feel that way, Nicholas? And it would be like, well, I feel that way because, I don't know, sometimes I'll say stuff to them and they don't take me seriously, or they make a joke about it, and it really offends me when they make a joke about something that I've said that I feel is very serious. And it's like, well, why do you feel, or why does it upset you that you feel that they don't take you seriously? And it's like, well, okay, maybe I didn't always feel like everybody felt like they took me seriously, or I didn't feel heard as a child. And what did that look like for you, Nicholas? Well, um, you know, what it looked like was people were not able to hear what I was saying. They would impose how they felt, and I would just take it. Um, and I think the reasoning for that is I, you know, maybe I didn't feel heard. And it's like, okay, well, why didn't you feel heard? And the answer to that question is, well, I spent a lot of my childhood, um, like a lot of other people, just listening to what other adults said. What didn't help was I also came from a heavily Caribbean background. My parents are Jamaican and Chinese, and those are two cultures where children are seen and not heard. And I think that in any other environment where you have like playmates and or a sister or a brother, or someone around your age group that you can talk to and still develop yourself, I think that that's not problematic. But I think that when you're an only child, only with adults, and you hear, oh, when I'm with adults, I should be seen and not heard, and I am a child with an adult, then I should be seen and not heard, doesn't give you the opportunity to really develop yourself, or your personality or sense of self worth, or I think socially what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so that's been like quite a journey for me. It's been a journey to figure out what works, what I can talk to people about, what I can't talk to people about. Um, and then there were, bits of my formidable years, your teen years, kind of like a what is it, young adulthood, that was spent um, literally locked up. Going full circle, I told you I was a lock and key kid, and my father would literally 6 days out of the week lock me in the house when he went out to go drink at bars. And so I wasn't able to have any face to face interaction with people. The only time that I would interact with people was via the phone, or text messages, unless my dad had the phone disconnected at night so I couldn't talk out. So it was kind of like, it's left me in a place where now I'm at 35 years old. I'm struggling in my relationships because I don't communicate well. And I'm just at 35 figuring out that the reason that my relationships are strained is because I don't communicate well. And so I'm trying to figure out, kind of where do you go from here? How do you get to the place where you're good at talking to people? And that's where I'm at. I don't know how to do those things, and I'm working on them. Um, so yeah, that's just another, page in the book of me trying to have a child successfully and figuring out what I can do to improve myself so that I'm serving that child as best as I can. Um, so yeah, um, it's something that I've been, kind of battling with, especially these past few weeks. As I said in my last video, the past couple of weeks have been a bit challenging for me because I had some realizations in my therapy, mostly to do with self worth, and it's been really hard on me realizing that I'm at this age and I'm probably not as advanced in human interaction as a lot of my counterparts. So it's been an experience, and I feel like hopefully doing something like this and talking to you guys out there, it'll help me to better communicate with people. And also, it'll help me to um, just become a better person, And like I said before, I'm able to talk out my issues pretty well when I verbalize them. Um, so I'm hoping that this will give me the opportunity to verbalize these things and kind of put them to bed. You know what I mean? Or figure out the root of them, and hopefully along the way help people out there that might be struggling with the same issues. Um, yeah. So that's it for now. Thank you all for tuning in. If you like, subscribe, and like my video. If not, you know, um, then don't. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would love if you guys would. I'll continue doing these videos. Hopefully, they'll continue to be helpful to other people, and people will find use of them, and it'll help somebody along. And honestly, if I just touch a couple of people and they find value in what I'm saying, then I feel like this whole thing will be worth it. And if not, if it helps none of ya, maybe it'll help me. And that's not a bad thing either. Maybe you'll watch me blossom into this wonderful person. Um, which that's cool. I'm cool with that. Are you cool with that? I'm cool with that. Anyway, thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.